Facebook users in Australia no longer able to share or view news articles amid an escalating row over a planned law to make tech giants pay for content. Authorities slamming the move as heavy-handed. It's the latest mass kidnapping in Nigeria. More than 24 students abducted from a boarding school and at least one killed by gunmen who have yet to be identified. And the EU to buy more shots of the coronavirus vaccine, announcing deals with Moderna along with Pfizer and BioNTech for hundreds of millions of additional doses. You're watching France 24. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Claire Rush. In Australia, Facebook users are no longer able to share news content. From early Thursday, Australians were unable to post links to news articles or view the pages of news outlets. The move came as retaliation over government plans that would force tech giants to pay for news content shared on their sites. The pages of some government and emergency services have also been caught up in the blackout, which has been slammed by authorities as heavy-handed. Here's the reaction of the communications minister.
We've had discussions with all of the parties, all of the stakeholders, digital platforms, news media businesses. That will continue, but what will also continue is we'll continue with the process of legislating the code. The principle is very clear. Google and Facebook are important parts of the digital ecosystem in Australia. They're important parts of the economy. We've made it clear that we want them to continue operating here, but we've also made it clear that if you do business in Australia, you need to comply with the law of land in Australia.
More on this story with our correspondent, Rochelle Harrison-Plus.
The threats to unfriend Australia were there, and now Facebook has followed through. The social network has blocked Australian users and publishers from seeing or posting news. That's in response to the federal government's proposed media bargaining code, which would force internet giants to pay Australian news outlets for their content. Facebook said it came to that decision with a heavy heart. But it's a decision that's in stark contrast to the approach of Google, another tech titan that would be affected by this contentious bargaining code. While Google threatened to shut down its search engine in Australia, since last week it's cut several multi-million-dollar deals with some of the country's biggest media companies such as News Corp, Seven West Media and Nine Entertainment. Meanwhile, Facebook's sudden news ban has not only affected news organisations, it's also taken down Facebook pages for the Weather Bureau, fire and emergency services and, crucially, government health services in the middle of a pandemic. Well, that's caused an outcry across the board, with so many people relying on Facebook to get their news. This removes important and credible news and information at a time when health misinformation is rife on the platform. Meanwhile, the Australian Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said he had a constructive discussion with Facebook chief Mark Zuckerberg this Thursday, and that they've agreed to try to find a pathway forward. So the battle is not over just yet.
Rochelle Harrison-Plus reporting from Sydney. Gunmen have attacked a boarding school in central Nigeria, killing at least one student and kidnapping as many as 42 people, including students, teachers, and their relatives. Local officials say the assailants attacked the school in the middle of the night on Wednesday, while its over 600 students were sleeping. President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered security forces to coordinate a rescue operation. The gunmen have yet to be identified. It's just the latest school kidnapping in Nigeria, as Brian Quinn reports.
Once again, a school in Nigeria targeted by gunmen. Over 24 students, several staff, and a dozen of their family members were abducted early Wednesday morning in the northwestern town of Kagara. One student reportedly shot dead in the raid. In the aftermath, local residents turned out at Government Science College as authorities scrambled to react.
Called on the federal government to deploy all resources while we are looking at all options, both kinetic and non-kinetic, to ensure the safe return of victims.
It's far from the first time Nigeria has seen such acts. Just 2 months ago, gunmen abducted nearly 350 boys from a secondary school in northwestern Katsina state. They were later released after government negotiations with kidnappers. In 2014, over 270 schoolgirls were kidnapped from the town of Chibok by terror group Boko Haram. Around 100 of those abductees are still missing to this day. While jihadi groups like Boko Haram remain a threat in northeastern Nigeria, the country's northwest and central states have become a hotbed for heavily armed criminal gangs who commonly resort to kidnapping the vulnerable for ransom money. Chronic violence and crime across Africa's most populous nation have sparked widespread criticism of President Muhammadu Buhari's handling of national security. In January, Buhari replaced his entire military high command. Over the past 10 years, armed groups have killed some 8,000 Nigerians and displaced more than 200,000.
Fighting back against criticism over its sluggish vaccine rollout, the EU has ordered more doses, announcing the purchase of hundreds of millions of additional shots from Moderna, along with Pfizer and BioNTech. Brussels also planning on investing in efforts to tackle the more contagious variants spreading through the bloc. Monty Francis has the details.
Slowed by limited supplies, the rollout of the COVID vaccine in the EU has hit a number of bumps in the road. Hoping to turn that around, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said many more doses are on the way.
The Commission has approved a second contract with Moderna to purchase 300 million additional doses of their vaccine against COVID-19. This is good news.
The EU Commission says its second contract with Moderna secures 150 million doses in 2021 and an option to purchase 150 million more in 2022. The news came just hours after Pfizer and BioNTech said they had signed a deal to deliver an additional 200 million vaccine doses to the bloc. Admitting the EU has not done enough to deal with new COVID variants, von der Leyen said some 300 million euros is being invested in efforts to combat new virus strains.
So we will always have to be vigilant to be able, if there escape mutations, to fight them with improved vaccines, to produce them.
Part of that effort includes fast-tracking approval of vaccines that have been modified to deal with those mutations. There are now 3 COVID shots approved for use in the EU: Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer-BioNTech. As the bloc races towards a goal of having 70% of adults vaccinated by September, a 4th shot could also be on the way. Johnson & Johnson has applied for use in the EU, and an approval could come in mid-March.
And finally, more dire weather warnings in the U.S. 100 million Americans now living under winter storm alerts as a new cold front threatens to bring more snow and sub-freezing temperatures to large swaths of the southern and eastern U.S., exacerbating days of frigid cold that have already killed at least 31 people and left millions without power in Texas. Some residents there now going on day 3 with no heat. Olivia Bizot has more.
Snow, a novelty in Texas. Average temperatures here in February usually hover between 20 and 24 degrees Celsius. It's now as low as minus 22 degrees.
It's pretty bad that, as Texans, we just can't prepare for cold. And every other part of the country, this would have not been even an issue.
About 4 million people in Texas are facing power outages after the energy grid was overwhelmed by a surge in demand.
The next few days are going to be very tough. To those who have lost power, I know you are frustrated. I know you're miserable. I know you're uncomfortable. I know it is very miserable in this cold without heat.
More than 150 million people across the country are currently under winter storm warnings. Deaths attributed to the storm have been recorded in Texas, as well as in Louisiana, Kentucky, Missouri, and North Carolina. People have died from traffic accidents and carbon monoxide poisoning from running car generators indoors to stay warm. In North Carolina, a tornado spawned by the same storm left 3 people dead and 10 injured.
We've been talking with our partners at National Weather Service, and they were very surprised how rapidly the storm intensified. It's something they normally don't see, so we didn't have much warning. And at the time of night, where most people are at home and in bed, it creates a very dangerous situation.
The cold snap has also threatened to disrupt the nation's COVID-19 vaccination efforts, with the government warning delays in vaccine shipments were likely. More freezing temperatures are forecast, with wind chill warnings reaching from Mexico into Canada.
And that wraps up this news bulletin here on France 24. But don't go away. There's more world news headlines coming up for you next.